The recent Russian invasion of Ukraine and the silence of US and NATO allies suggest that Russia is a serious contender of Western Hemisphere. It is evident that today's events are historic as the world system seems to balance from all the poles. If you interpret what is happening today, you could say that now the North Pole and the South Pole, these two poles are now in state of balance, equilibrium. This is what I'm thinking now, because America cannot, we'll see what Mr. Putin has to say here. It was 2018, Mr. Putin said these words. He said, we can no longer tolerate the current state of affairs in the world. Yes, and it was when the American NATO instigated revolution in Ukraine and Russia annexed the Crimea. So this is what he said. No longer, we can no longer tolerate what is, we cannot longer stay silent with the world affairs. He said also, we have made it clear that any further expansion, any further movement of NATO to the east is unacceptable. Is there any unclear about this? Don't you understand about this? Are we not clear? The West should know this. Are we deploying missiles near the US border? No, we are not. It is the US that has come to our home with its missiles and standing at our doorstep. The issue of US coming to the east, especially the Eastern Europe, it is like your enemy renting a house at your nearby. Yes, so this is how Russia and specifically Mr. Vladimir Putin sees. Now, will this balance of power change anything? Will it change anything? Do you see the situation that we suggest that the situation now is balanced? Will it change anything? Is it going to change anything? For me, the answer, I think yes, it will change. It will lead us into global realignment, and which has now taken place. The global realignment is taking place. You will see. Realignment is the term mostly used in politics and international relations. It refers to the process of changing ideas, policies, so that they are the same as those of another person or group. In this context, global realignment could mean the change of global policies to suit the current global political setup. The world will, this shape, it will take shape, policies will change, ideas will change to meet the demand of the world today, of these two, of the world that has two, is multipolar world order. So this is what I think. This is simply because the Russia war in Ukraine has a tremendous impact for both Russia and the rest of the world. In my opinion, is that things will not be the same after the Russian war. Things will not be the same. What I'm anticipating is that it is the reshaping of the world history, and this reshaping is happening before our eyes. How? Yes, I call it Putin geo-economic judo. Judo moves, flips the financial tables on the West. It seems that, for me, I think that Mr. Putin calculated his move, calculated his actions before took any move, before he decided to invade Ukraine. We will see. After Russia decided to invade Ukraine, the West naively thought that their unprecedented and proclaimed sanctions against Russia would crush the country economy, because they immediately imposed sanction on Russia. One of the heaviest sanction maybe in history. We'll see, because they have froze the accounts in major Western banks. Russia cannot access its gold in major banks in Europe and America. Russia is also removed from SWIFT, international monetary system of transferring money from one bank to another, so it is removed. We'll see. So this attempt, the West and especially US thought that this action could crush the Russian economy, coercing it into undertaking unilateral concession that would essentially amount to sacrifice the integrity of its national security-led lines. This sanction, West thought that after sanction, maybe Russia will back down and say, I'm sorry, I'm going out of Ukraine. However, that was not the case. Mr. Putin continued with his misadventure. For years now, Russia and China have looked for ways to re-monetize gold. They wanted it to shift from the monetary system of today business. They wanted to shift from dollar, this petrodollar. But they did not have ways. As well as be able to exit from SWIFT. They wanted to shift, to go away with SWIFT, this method of internet transfer of money. They feel that this is just enable the dollar, but here the challenge for Russia, with whoever is the highest bidder, that too in a current of its choosing. As you have heard from 3 days ago, I think 4 or 3 days, Mr. Putin said that those who are buying oil from our country, from Russia, now we do not accept dollar or euro. If you want oil, if you want gas from Russia, you will have to pay in ruble, which is Russian currency. Now, so Russia has said, we will go on to turn our oil pipeline back on, but not for dollar, instead for rubles. And yesterday, I was reading, the mechanism is already in place, and Mr. Putin said from April 1st, those countries, unfriendly countries that have shown hostile to Russia will have to pay in ruble. If they do not pay, we will switch the coke, because we cannot give you gas and oil as a charity. So Russia then declared that Europe or anybody who wants Russian oil and gas in the world, they must be paid in ruble or any other ruble-backed payment. And remember, Russia is the 3rd largest producer of oil and one of the biggest producers of gas. Similarly, this move allows Russia to have ruble and the yuan business. Yuan is the currency of China. So, and recently the Chinese, they have agreed that they will do business with Russia using the domestic currencies. It will also help or allow the trade between India, which has the largest population. You see, China has more than 1 billion people. India has more than 1 billion people. So it's a marketplace for Russia. And they have agreed that they will trade in rupee and ruble. Yes. Now this leverage as the 3rd biggest oil producer has caused immediate price shock to the West. The price of goods have risen tremendously in both Europe and America. The price have skyrocketed And the Western world, at the beginning of this year, oil was trading as 75 USD. It's more than 140. Today is more than 140 a barrel, doubling within just 3 months. You could see how it is happening. It is not just Russia or China today, even Saudi Arabia and the UAE are openly talking about selling their oil and settling local currencies. Both Russia and Iran, for example, are offering countries like India and China oil at hugely discounted price. Now, are you going to buy oil somewhere else, or are you going to buy this oil that is hugely discounted? And I guess what this country are lacking at this second. And the biggest consumer of oil is China and India. They must be licking their finger at this prospect of buying oil at 25 to 30% discount. And the geopolitics is also keeping at pace. You see how things are going. Today, so instead of Russia leader, the EU is now forced to either boost Russian import from Eurasian great power and the risk price sparking upward to 4,000 maybe per cubic for 1,000 cubic meter of gas. Either outcome is beneficial for Russia. Its currency now is stabilizing and euro have started crashing. This isolation of Russia by West leading to greater integration with China, India, Iran and other. After, for example, after Visa and MasterCard suspended their activity in Russia, Russia accepted the Chinese Union Pay system and they agreed that it will be introduced in Russia, taking over the Visa and the MasterCard. This will be the late sanction and more contemporary Chinese alternative will eventually repress them. The Chinese have a fantastic opportunity to enter into the market. So the question for the West, the US is who will suffer the most at the end of this quagmire? China will supply all options to the sanctions that have been imposed. Yes, sanctioning a country that is 11th biggest economy in the world, a major exporter of grain in the world, wheat, corn, and soya, a large fertilizer exporter, large exporter of oil and gas is not as consequential as sanctioning Zimbabwe of Mugabe or Venezuela of Maduro. Now, the disaster is looming in Europe and the world. Yes, this meme was circulating 2 days ago from our local town that kuanzia tarehe 4 mwezi wa 4 mwaka 2022 chapati zitauzwa 800, bei itarudi kawaida vita ikiisha. When Mr. Putin decided to lay down his arm and we'll also get chapati. Yesterday in the evening I went to a local shop to buy bread and I was told that there were no bread. There were no supply of bread today. So we should be prepared for cassava bread, whatever, I don't know. So the rise of food price, it is happening today. It is happening today in Europe, in America, and the other part of the world. Food prices have skyrocketed. Gas and oil has also tremendously increased. The decline of USD and the euro currency and the Yesterday I was reading, the boss of IMF was saying that this sanction will weaken the dollar. They are agreeing that now things are not as they were. Is it possible that the petrodollar to decline? Is it possible? This is the question. Now, can the world avoid or stop using dollar as a means of transaction, especially in buying and selling oil and gas? One of the biggest consequences of the United States and the European Union was kicking Russia off the SWIFT banking transaction system. Removing Russia from SWIFT was exactly what Russia and China desired. And here is why. The SPFC, the SPFS, it stands for System for Transfer of Financial Message. It is a Russian equivalent to SWIFT. It was developed by the Central Bank of Russia in 2014 when to replace SWIFT. They were thinking that it was when Barack Obama he threatened Russia that he will ban from SWIFT. So he ordered the vast majority of SWIFT. This is because the vast majority of SWIFT transactions are settled in US dollars, and that simply helps solidify the dollar as the global reserve currency. This gives United States tremendous influence of the economy, and therein lies the real power. You see, US and Putin was accusing the US for reprinting every now and then the dollar. Reprinting the dollar, and it gave power to US to exercise her power economic. If Russia and China come up with an alternative system to compete with the SWIFT, that will be competing currency system, and it will further weaken the US dollar. Remember, Russia is the largest exporter of energy, and China is the largest manufacturer of goods exported. They could also easily co-opted existing partners like in Africa. Yes, you could see America is trying to force the Africans that you should also condemn Mr. Putin. The Africans say, no, we are neutral, we are non-aligned. That is your business. But in real sense, we are also the among those who are affected by. So Russia is much more, and China are much more closer to the north, to the south, especially Africa, Asia, Latin America, compared to NATO. So there is a possibility that these two giant countries could actually be able to sneak into African countries and countries in Latin America, putting Europe and the United States on the back foot. Now, for the last, if this is succeeded, for the last 50 years, this petrodollar system has been challenged until now, when Mr. Vladimir Putin is trying to challenge. Yes, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, has traveled numerous countries in 3 days. He went to Iran, UAE, he went to Qatar, he went to China, he went to Turkey, he went to several countries trying to mobilize a coalition that will skip the US dollar. Will it be successful? Will dollar or the West will change the policies on petrodollar trade system? Mr. Putin has this say that West global political and economic dominance is ending. Wednesday, he was speaking, he said that the myth of Western welfare state in the so-called golden billion is crumbling. The whole planet that is having to pay the price for West's ambition and its attempt to retain its vanishing dominance at any cost. Last week, US tried to go into countries that were not friends. They were trying to establish a sort of communication with Venezuela. As you may remember, US does not recognize Maduro as the president of Venezuela, but they've started to establish so that he produce oil and the oil be accepted in US to just to cover what is missing in the market because of Russia. There are also possibility of US trying to convince Iran and endorse the nuclear deal with 5 countries. However, countries like Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries have reports suggest that they've been avoiding taking calls from the West. Yes, they don't want to get involved. There are also some future development. All this suggests that if my assumptions are true, the world is not ready for the development that we can yet imagine. I believe that this is only few of what is happening. And in the near future, the world should expect, yes, new development that are terrifying. This year marks the end of Cold War, and it's the new beginning of the new Cold War, and possibly the hot war. I think it's going to be a hot war. What started with 2 nations now divides the world. Military spending, I'm afraid this year budget for military spending of these 2 countries will double. Expect to see espionage for countries that refuse to collaborate with US and NATO. Expect proxy wars, and they are likely to increase in the near future. I would like to end by saying that what I've said reflects only my opinion. It does not represent any opinion of any institution or anyone. So if it's scrutiny, I can handle it. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
If we spew,
They have been
bombed
okay.
today. So, is that a one-side war, or is just a war between the 2 sides? That's my question. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Russian war in Ukraine. Is it balance of power or global reality? The question is that, is it necessary to be a balance of power or global alignment? Perhaps it could have other factors which factor this war to happen. Only that.
Okay, so it's simple. Is it a balance of power or global alignment? Is it necessary? Or it's just a chaos, right? Yeah, might be. Another question?
Thank you very much for giving this time to answer the question. Yes, my question is, between this war, Ukraine and Russia, as we know that we have an instrument which
are kept in order to preserve peace and security, which means UN. So, what is the standing point on this war over the UN?
What is the role of UN in this war?
First of all, I want to pay special tribute to Mr. Mtanange, for the views, his personal views, but I share most of his views about what he has said. The problem of geopolitics, global geopolitics, is that it's always very difficult because of the distinction between appearance and reality. Most of you know, you think you know that Russia invaded Ukraine. But the US and NATO, they know. That's why they are silent and they have not intervened. Now you mentioned somewhere that the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the silence of US and NATO